They say New Zealand is a quiet place, peaceful, remote, safe, but the silence can be deceiving. For decades, there have been murders that have shaken this land to its core, not because they were solved, but because they weren't. These are the stories that never found justice, victims left behind, families haunted by shadows, and killers still out there. These are New Zealand's most chilling unsolved murders. G'day, kia ora, and yama. Welcome back to Shadow Matter, where I take a look at a darker side of our world with a focus on stories and cases from Australia and New Zealand, here, every second Sunday. If you're the type of weirdo who likes drifting off to sleep whilst listening to morbidly panic-inducing stories about horrific crimes, then why not check out my podcast? It's called Shadow Matter, and you can find it on Spotify. This is going to be a 2-part episode, or maybe even 3 parts. I don't know. But I saw your comments and I heard your desires for more Kiwi true crime content with a little bit of mystery thrown in. And so I'm gonna deliver. 5 unsolved murders here in New Zealand. Here we go. Number 5, Jane Furlong. Jane Furlong was just 17, a young mother, a high school student, and a sex worker on Auckland's Karangahape Road, more commonly known as K Road. On the night of May 26, 1993, she vanished without a trace. She'd been seen heading to her usual spot outside Rendell's, and then nothing. She was bright, articulate, fiercely independent. Those who knew her described her as witty, clever, and determined. She wasn't naive, she was surviving. Raised by her mother, Judith, Jane's early years were marked by both promise and hardship. She had dreams of finishing school, of raising her young son, of building a life away from the street. But K Road, in the early 90s, wasn't a place for second chances. It was a strip known for its neon and noise, but beneath that surface was violence, drugs, gangs. Jane had her wits about her, and providing a stable life for her young son was paramount. She wanted out of the streets, out of the game, and back into school. But on the night of May the 26th, 1993, Jane disappeared. She was last seen around 8:30 p.m. outside Rendell's department store, waiting for a client. She was supposed to meet her boyfriend later that night. He said she never showed. Jane was about to testify in 2 court cases, one against a group of gang members and another against a violent client. She had been operating in a part of Auckland where gang presence was strong. On K Road, sex workers were often under the control or influence of street gangs, and Jane, unfortunately, was no exception. She was said to have known and possibly have been protected or coerced by individuals linked to organised crime. Her impending testimony threatened to expose more than one criminal. Some believe this made her a target. Her mother, Judith, had begged for her not to go out that night. She feared something would happen, and she was right. For 19 years, there was nothing. No answers, no peace. Then in 2012, nearly 2 decades later, a breakthrough. Jane's remains were discovered, buried deep in the sand dunes at Sunset Beach, Port Waikato. 2 names surfaced. Her boyfriend at the time, Danny Norseworthy, was the last person to see her alive. He was interviewed, never charged. And Wayne McGrath, a convicted rapist who once claimed to have known where Jane's body was. He later recanted, and he lived near Sunset Beach. Still, no charges, no convictions, no justice. Some believe she was killed to silence her before she could testify. Others think she trusted the wrong person. Some say her death was a warning, a message from the underworld. Jane's story is one of silence, of a girl the system couldn't protect, of a mother who never stopped looking. Her killer is still out there, and someone, somewhere, knows the truth. Number 4, Kayo Matsuzawa. She came for a fresh start, a new city, a new chapter. But what greeted her was a door that closed forever. In September 1998, Kayo Matsuzawa, a Japanese national, left Christchurch for Auckland. Then she disappeared. Almost 2 weeks later, her body was found, locked inside an office building cupboard. To this day, her killer has never been caught. Kayo Matsuzawa was born in Japan in the early 1970s. Raised in a small town in Yamagata Prefecture, she was known as a shy, kind-hearted, and quietly determined person. She wanted to see the world, to improve her English, to live independently, to explore something beyond the expectations of her hometown. In 1997, she made the leap. New Zealand was her destination. She spent around 18 months in Christchurch studying English, working part-time, and building a quiet life in a new country. She kept in close contact with her family back home. Her mother, especially, was worried about her. When Kayo told her she planned to visit Auckland, alone, her mother was frightened. She begged her daughter to stay in Christchurch, or at least be cautious, but Kayo insisted. She wanted the adventure, and she believed New Zealand was safe. Kayo arrived in Auckland in early September 1998. She checked into a budget backpackers hostel on Queen Street. She left her baggage neatly arranged, as if she planned to return shortly. But she never came back. 11 days later, her body was found, naked and decomposing, locked inside a fire alarm cupboard on the 10th floor of the Centre Court building, a place that should have been secure, busy, and public. She had been strangled. There were no signs of forced entry. The room was rarely used and easily overlooked. It took a lingering odor and a technician's curiosity to prompt the discovery. She was found naked in an advanced state of decomposition. Her clothes, bag, passport, and personal items were missing. Her body showed no obvious signs of sexual assault, though decomposition limited definitive conclusions. Investigators were cautious to not rule it out entirely. The position of Kayo's body suggested she was killed elsewhere in the building and then moved. The fact there were no signs of forced entry led police to believe that Kayo was either let in by someone with access or followed someone in without resistance. Security cameras did pick up some fleeting images. Kayo walked nearby and a man, a blurred figure loitering close to the building. The identity of this man is still unknown. Years later, DNA was found under her fingernails. A suspect was identified, but no charges were laid. Police and profilers believe the killer was someone familiar with the building, possibly a tenant, employee, or security contractor. The room was obscure and hidden. You'd need to know where it was to be able to use it. That knowledge narrowed the suspect pool, but justice was never delivered. A new person of interest has since emerged, but again, justice remains elusive. Kayo's murder shocked the public, a young foreign woman killed and hidden in plain sight in the heart of Auckland. It raised fears about how easily someone could disappear and how little anyone seemed to notice. Her mother died, never knowing what happened to her daughter. Kayo's story remains one of a quiet tragedy and a crime that still casts a shadow over the heart of the city. And I actually can't believe I've never heard of this case before researching for this episode. But I suppose it was sandwiched in between two massive New Zealand crimes that sparked a huge amount of media coverage, that being the Sounds murders of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope 9 months earlier, and the case of Kirsty Bentley. Number 3, Mallerie Manning. Mallerie Manning worked Christchurch's streets. On the night of December the 18th, 2008, she was abducted. Her body was found in the Avon River the next day, tortured, dumped. Police believe she was taken to a gang house and then murdered as a warning, but no one would talk. Too dangerous, too many secrets. Mallerie Manning was just 27 years old, funny, sharp, tough on the outside, but deeply loyal to those she loved. She was raised in Christchurch, one of 6 children in a close-knit but struggling family. Her early years were marked by instability, and by her teens, she had begun drifting. She fell into circles that offered comfort, but also danger. At 16, she started working in the sex industry, first through escort agencies, and later on the streets. But it wasn't the life she dreamed of, but it was the life she had. She battled addiction, she had brushes with the law, but those close to her say she never lost her humanity or her humor. She still called her sister nearly every day. She still talked about getting out. Mallory was working Manchester Street, Christchurch's known red light zone, when she got into a car. Witnesses said it was around 10:45 p.m. She never came back. The next morning, her body was found in the Avon River, dumped like trash. She had been badly beaten, tortured, strangled. Police believe she was abducted, taken to a gang house, and murdered as a warning. An execution, not just a crime of opportunity. Whispers pointed to members of the Mongrel Mob, a powerful gang in Christchurch with deep connections to violence and drugs. It's believed that Mallory may have been witnessed or have been involved in something that she wasn't supposed to see. One man was arrested in connection to her murder, but without witness cooperation, the case collapsed. Too many people were too afraid to talk. Her family begged for answers. Her sister Robin led media campaigns, held vigils, pleaded with gang members to come forward, but silence held. More than a decade later, Mallory's case remains open, but the longer it sits, the colder it gets. And those responsible, likely still walk Christchurch's streets. Number 2. Kirsty Bentley. 15-year-old Kirsty Bentley left home to walk her dog, but never came back. The dog was found hours later, alone, tied to a tree near a river track. 2 weeks passed before her body was found in dense bushland, miles away. Kirsty Bentley was 15 years old, bright, quirky, a bit shy, but deeply caring. She loved animals, loved to draw, and always wore her hair long and loose. She lived in the small town of Ashburton on New Zealand's South Island, a place where nothing much happened. Kirsty lived with her parents, Jill and Sid, and her older brother, John. It was a quiet life, unremarkable, safe, or so it seemed. It was the summer school holidays in New Zealand, and Kirsty was besotted with a young boy she had recently developed a teenage relationship with. After some resistance from her parents, mainly her father, Kirsty was granted allowance to have her boyfriend over for a family dinner and to stay the night. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're going to say, she's too young, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we all get it. But, some families, they just operate differently. I don't know. That's their family. Who are we to judge? On the day leading up to her disappearance, Kirsty and her boyfriend had been playing a bit of phone tag. Now, for those of you old enough to remember those days, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not, then just imagine only having one phone in your house and it was usually attached to a wall and someone would call you and you weren't there, so you'd go and call them back and they weren't there and it would just go on and on and on. Yeah, way before everyone had a phone in their pocket. On December the 31st, 1998, around 2:30 in the afternoon, Kirsty took her beloved black Labrador Abby for a walk. She left her home on South Street, barefoot but comfortable. It was a short walk to the Ashburton River track, a regular route for her and the dog. But Kirsty never came back. By 5 p.m, she was reported missing. Hours later, Abby was found, alone, tied to a tree near the river, about 1.5 kilometers from their house, calm and waiting, making no noise. But there was no trace of Kirsty. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through the town. Search teams combed the river surrounding bush, farmland, and homes. Rumours spread fast, suspicions even faster. Then 2 weeks later, on January the 17th, Kirsty's body was discovered by cannabis growers in a remote area of the Rakaia Gorge. She'd been dumped beneath the dense vegetation, 40 kilometres from where she'd vanished. She was partially clothed, her underwear had been removed, a blunt force injury to the head was recorded, but the rest inconclusive. Police suspected the crime was sexually motivated, but the killer had taken great care. There was no forensic evidence left behind, no DNA, no tire tracks, no witnesses. Suspicion fell quickly on Kirsty's own family, particularly her father Sid and brother John, who were reportedly the last to see her that day. Sid's movements were inconsistent. John, police later admitted, had scratches on his hands. But there was no physical evidence, no confession, and no official charges ever laid. Others believed the killer was a stranger, possibly someone cruising the river tracks or watching from the shadows. There were reported sightings of a suspicious van, unknown men in the area, but nothing stuck. In fact, the suspicious van in question was seen on the day Kirsty disappeared, December the 31st, 1998. Multiple witnesses claimed to have seen a green or dark-coloured van in the area near the Ashburton River walking track, where Kirsty and her dog often walked. Some witnesses reported the van was parked near the river reserve, while others said it had appeared to be loitering or slowly cruising away from the area. One sighting suggested a man inside the van was watching people, raising concerns that it may have been a predator scouting for victims. Police reportedly received at least one description of the driver, a man aged between 30 to 40, possibly European, but no composite sketch was ever publicly released, likely due to the vagueness of witness descriptions. Despite appeals to the public, the van and its driver were never identified. The vehicle did not belong to anyone in Kirsty's family, nor could it be linked to any local residents. Some investigators believe the van could have belonged to a travelling offender, someone passing through Ashburton, making the crime opportunistic and, ergo, harder to solve. Others believe the van may have had nothing to do with the murder, and the sightings, while unsettling, could have been unrelated coincidences. As of the latest updates from New Zealand Police, the identity of the van and the driver remains unknown. However, the tip is still considered active, and authorities continue to encourage anyone with information to come forward, even decades later. In 2019, police announced they were re-examining the evidence with new forensic technology, but still, no resolution. Kirsty Bentley should have walked her dog and came home, She didn't. Instead, her name joined a long list of New Zealand's coldest cases, frozen in silence, buried in whispers. By the way, I have an episode on this case, so if you want to learn more about it, then go and check it out. Link below. Number 1. The Crewe Murders. Yeah, possibly New Zealand's biggest unsolved murder case. A wrongful conviction was made and later overturned, but the real killer remains elusive. Welcome to the Repeat Offenders Club here on Shadow Matter. I can't remember how many times I've mentioned this case, but it always seems to come up and pop up in one of these types of videos. So yeah, it's a biggie. In June 1970, Harvey and Jeanette Crewe, a farming couple in Pukekawa, suddenly vanish. 5 days later, their baby daughter Rochelle is found alone in her cot, dirty, hungry, but alive. Someone had been feeding her, and then stopped. The Crewe's house was the scene of a violent crime, bloodstains, bullet holes, and signs of struggle, but no sign of Jeanette or Harvey. Weeks passed, then months. In August, Jeanette's body was found in the Waikato River, weighted down with a car axle. In September, Harvey's body surfaced too, not far from where Jeanette's body was found. Both had been shot at close range. Police had a lot of work and ground to cover. No obvious enemies of the Crews, no debts, barely any motive at all. Jeanette's father, Len Demler, was initially a suspect. Len Demler was a quiet, stoic man, a farmer, like his daughter and son-in-law, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. He reportedly disapproved of Jeanette's marriage to Harvey Crewe. There were also disputes over land, inheritance, and family trust money. The Demlers were wealthy, and some of that wealth was supposed to go to Jeanette. Also, Len's behavior after the murders raised some eyebrows. He was the one who found baby Rochelle 5 days after the couple vanished, yet he didn't immediately raise the alarm. Police believed the house showed signs of being cleaned, as though someone had been inside after the murders, possibly to care for the baby. Len admitted seeing Rochelle alone in the cot, but claimed he didn't think anything was wrong. Really? His fingerprints were inside the house, which, wasn't surprising, but the timing of his visit and the lack of urgency made investigators suspicious. Some believe Len may have had a financial motive, or was at least covering up for someone who did. It was speculated he may have discovered the crime, panicked, and cleaned up to protect a family member. Surprisingly, Len was actually cut from the suspect list. Why? Well, because police found another suspect, but they got it wrong. The police fixated on one man, Arthur Allen Thomas, a local farmer and neighbour who had past disagreements with the Crews over property boundaries. Now, that part isn't actually substantiated, and in fact, it was just rumours that the detectives ran with, like, it was just another rumour about Arthur having an affair or holding a romantic obsession with Jeanette. None of this was ever true. Their suspicion was based on circumstantial claims and witness statements that were later discredited. But then came a supposed breakthrough, a .22 caliber shell casing found in the Crewe's garden, allegedly fired from Thomas's rifle. This became the cornerstone of the investigators' case. Arthur Allen Thomas was tried and convicted twice. But in 1979, a royal commission uncovered the truth. Police had planted that shell casing to frame him. Ooh, you dodgy cops, you! Sadly, this seems to be quite common in some high-profile cases in New Zealand. Remember, kids, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Shout out to my main man, Lord Acton. Arthur Allen Thomas spent nearly 9 years behind bars, from 1970 until his pardon in December 1979. He was pardoned, released, and vindicated. But the real killer? Still unknown. Was it a neighbour, a cover-up, an inside job? And perhaps the most disturbing question of all, who looked after the baby in those 5 days? There were witnesses who claimed they saw an unidentified woman near the Crewe property during the first 5 days of their disappearance. This person has never been identified. It remains one of New Zealand's biggest unsolved murders, and that's why it's at number 1 on today's list. A few honourable mentions go to the Sounds murders and the Bain family murders, and for obvious reasons they weren't included in this list. Maybe I'll include them in the next episode. If you have any information related to these cases, contact New Zealand Police or call Crime Stoppers anonymously at 0800 555 111. This has been New Zealand's 5 most chilling unsolved murders. I've been Shadow Matter, and you've been awesome. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell like you're trying to send an SOS Morse code. And I'll see you here next time in the shadows.